So hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the summer 2022 information session for the Daniel and Florence Guggenheim Foundation Internship Program, Oscar S. Strauss II Fellows in Criminal Justice. Quite the handful, quite the mouthful, so we'll call it the Guggenheim Internships for the rest of this. I am Lindsay Granger Weaver, the Senior Associate Director of Internship Programs and also the Equity Lead at Beyond Barnard. And welcome to this info session. Thank you so much for coming. Happy Friday to all who observe. Sometimes during finals, that's a challenge and time is not really a thing. So appreciate you coming out to learn more about this great program and hear from some of our lovely past participants. So what we'll go through in this next hour-ish time, program overview and benefits, the application process and expectations. You'll hear, and some of you, if you applied last year, this process will look a little different because our partnership with Princeton is such that now we're running the application as opposed to them. And so we'll talk a little more about what that looks like. And then we'll get insights from past participants. We have quite a few here for this program, and they'll share their experiences about last summer and hopefully get you all excited about applying. And then some questions, whatever questions you have, and then some next steps in this. So the Guggenheim internships are funded by the Daniel and Florence Guggenheim Foundation. They're opportunities for students interested in criminal justice. And so all of the partner organizations are somehow in this constellation of orgs that are related to criminal justice. Some opportunities are closer to maybe lawyering. Some of them are more looking at the criminal justice system or reforms to it from the outside. And so it's really looks at criminal justice very broadly. Unfortunately, seniors are not eligible for this program. So if you're a graduating senior, sorry. And then the funding is split between Barnard, Columbia, and Princeton. And so Princeton is the stewards of the grant, but there are equal amounts of funding. They're just the ones who administer that. So the benefits of the internships, really good benefits. So a $5,000 summer stipend for 8 to 10 weeks of meaningful internship work. These aren't ones where, some stereotypes of internships of just like making copies, getting coffees, which aren't legally internships anyway, but definitely these are opportunities for you to really play in the sandbox, get your hands dirty, and do some of the work that is meaningful and learn about what it takes to do well in this space. There are also group seminars and workshops as part of the summer. What we're looking at for this summer too is maybe having some cohort meetups with some of the other funded programs here at Barnard and at Columbia, just so that there's a lot more cross-pollination, a lot more networking of people who are doing different things, but also making really great impact. So stay tuned for that. Also speaker series, and then this puts you into a network of peers and professionals who are are former Guggenheim fellows, but also people who work in this space. And so it's something that's great for the summer, but also can push forward in your career and really help with some of the next steps, especially if you want to work in this space. So the application timeline, so by January 12th, fill out the interest form, which is on a QR code in the later slide, but QR codes came back with a vengeance, so we're taking advantage of that. On January 13th is when the application will open. 18th is when the application will close. And then in March, the interviews will take place and the selection process will start with the internship organizations themselves. And then in early April, the sites will make their decisions and then the offers will be made. We're still working on securing all of the sites that will be offered. And so I'm going to just refer to them broadly as the internship sites because the opportunities are currently in the works. And so that's something that in January, definitely by the time the application opens, you will see all of the opportunities that are available. And so as part of that application, you will review the internship descriptions. They will all just be job descriptions. You can apply to 2 sites. You can apply to 1, but you cannot apply to 3. And so the application itself will just this is what it'll look like. Very standard information. A lot of it may look like what you filled out to register for this event if you're not a fine arts student. So name, uni, student ID number, all of that. A resume, so 1 to 2 pages that ideally would be tailored to this, but really just showing us, the things that us and the partner organizations, some of the things that you're into. A personal statement, so no more than 1,000 words. It can be less. Please don't make it more. Really helping us and the selection folks at these partner sites get to know you, your interest in the criminal justice field. If there are specific partners whose opportunities speak to what you're interested in doing or what you're interested in pursuing for the summer, we absolutely recommend that you would tailor the personal statement, but that's not necessarily necessary for this. References, so just names and contact information. No one needs to write you a letter. And then an unofficial transcript. So these are the things that you will upload into our application portal. And then once we know who is applying to where after February 18th, we'll send those out to our partner sites, who will then start the application process on their own. And so now let's do insights from our Guggenheim interns. And so if you all would like to, maybe you can leave your camera off if you want to. I understand it's a Friday, but anyone want to start? Just first go around, introduce yourselves, your name, school and year, your majors, and then what your internship site was, and then just maybe a general highlight from that site. And I'll let whoever wants to start out of our great volunteers go first.
I can start us off if nobody else wants the honor. My name is Lily. Hi, everyone. I am a current senior at Barnard studying political economy and East Asian languages and cultures, and I use any pronouns. And last summer, I was a Guggenheim intern at the Vera Institute of Justice. I was working on their Unlocking Potential team, which focuses on expanding access to post-secondary education for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals. And I'd say the highlight of my summer was that the Unlocking Potential team really let me get involved with a lot of different projects, because the organization is project-based and individuals even within those projects are working on different aspects of the same issue to get a really comprehensive approach to the problems they're facing. And so I definitely think that as a result of like taking initiative and reaching out to people and asking everybody I met to get involved with their work, people ended up really embracing that and letting me get onto their projects with them. And that was my #1 highlight.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Muskan. I go to Columbia College. I'm a senior. I'm studying political science and economics, and with a concentration in art history. And I worked at the Center for Court Innovation last summer. And basically what the Center of Court Innovation does, they have a deal with New York City courts that when a person gets convicted of a crime, instead of going through their prison sentence, they basically get entered into our community-based programming. So I was the youth justice intern at the Center for Court Innovation. So I worked with court-involved people under 18, and one of my highlights was really getting on the ground and getting to meet the people I was working with, and getting to hear these stories and having this hands-on experience that I've never had before. I've learned like so much about incarceration, and something I've been passionate about, but that was never an experience I was able to have before, and I am eternally grateful for it.
I can go next. My name is Theodore. I'm in CC, class of 22. My major is poli-sci and psych, and I worked at also the Center for Court Innovation, but specifically with the UpNext program, which deals with formerly incarcerated fathers who are having trouble like co-parenting and raising a child. And I think that this opportunity was like really good in that it allowed me to pursue both my interests in law and psychology because I was able to work with the social workers who specialize in cognitive behavioral therapy, but also like legal experts. And for me, I guess the highlight was being able to like sit in on their sessions, join in on the conversation, and like help develop the actual curriculum that a lot of these participants go through. And even after the program, I stayed in touch with like a couple of the formerly incarcerated dads, and like we played basketball and things. So it was a really good experience overall. Yeah.
I can hop in. Hi all, I'm Adam Klug. I'm a senior in Columbia College. I'm a history and political science major with a specialization in 20th century crime and policing. I worked with the Osborne Association, which is an advocacy group based out of Brooklyn, last summer, and specifically with their court advocacy services. So what I worked with was finding ways to mitigate harm and hopefully remove people from the criminal justice system by entering them into things like substance abuse treatment, anger management programs, community building programs, assuring to find people housing who were homeless and criminalized for that reason, etc. And I also worked very broadly with their parole work, working with individuals who are on parole to assure that they did not have to re-enter the criminal legal system. And it was probably one of the most involved internship experiences I've ever had. I was actually assigned my own group of clients who I met with one-on-one, a few who were on parole and a few who were already involved in the carceral system. And I was able to create my own recommendations and draft my own policy for lawyers and other advocates at Osborne and beyond during that time. So that was certainly a highlight. And I think it speaks to what Lindsay was saying earlier about this isn't a grab and coffee kind of internship. You really do become an integral part of the teams that you're working on, and you're considered an equal as such. And I think that's a really special part of what my internship was and what the Guggenheim internship program is at large.
I can go next. I'm Natalia. Hi, everyone. I'm a senior at Barnard College. I'm majoring in political science and minoring in psychology. And my internship site was at CASES, which stands for the Center for Alternative Sentences and Employment Services. And I was a core representative intern there through the Guggenheim Fellowship. So what CASES does is it's an alternative to incarceration program in New York City for youth/adolescents who are involved in the criminal justice system. So our clients are typically 16 to 21 years old, so really young. And we work with their defense attorneys to try to reduce their sentence from a felony into either a misdemeanor or something that'll be expunged from their record if they work with cases for, it could be anywhere like 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, because I'm sure, as you all know, like having a felony sort of prohibits you from doing a lot of things for the rest of your life. So some of the things I did at this internship was I got to write my own court reports that were sent to everybody during the court appearances, including the prosecutors, the judges, that would advocate how our clients were doing between each court session in terms of education, employment services, therapy. Those are all personal development. Those are all things that we provide at CASES. And as a court representative intern, I would present those to the judge and have the opportunity to speak to how our clients are doing. And personally, I was really interested in gaining more experience in public interest law, and especially in something that sort of is trying to change the system. So I definitely think that CASES fulfill this desire of mine. And I, like a few other people have said, I got to meet a lot of our clients, and there were a lot of court appearances every week. So if that's something that you're interested in, then I think you should consider CASES as your site.
Thank you all for those great introductions, just kind of telling us exactly what you did. It sounds like this is very in the sandbox, meaningful types of work that can really help both you figure out, if this is something that you want to pursue as a career, but also like had some real impact in people's lives. So can y'all, in any order whatsoever, if you'd like to share maybe one key lesson, like something you learned from your internship? We had an info session yesterday for the Lyman Law Program, which is pretty similar to this, and both commented on not really knowing until they were in it, like how messy this process was and how complicated doing criminal justice and public interest types of work is. And so just if any of you want to share something like a key takeaway or key lesson that you took from your summer.
I could start us off since, even though I just went last, because I've actually talked about this in, I'm a senior who's applying for jobs right now. And every time someone like asks me about my resume and like speak about one of your internships, like I automatically want to talk about this internship and what I've learned from it and what I've gained from it. And I feel like I've been asked this specific question, and something that I really didn't realize or experience slash see firsthand until I worked at Cases was like how fundamental and how important it is for people to have security and structure in their lives in order to live like fulfilling slash law abiding lives. So one of the projects I like spearheaded by myself at Cases was I wanted to do an interview research project with our alumni to see sort of where they are in life and how they think how Cases like impacted them since it reduced their sentences and helped them avoid prison time. And it was really, really eye-opening to speak to our former clients, or who we call successful alumni, and hear them say things like, Cases was the first time I had like structure and discipline in my life, where somebody actually like held my hand and like showed me like, this is how you get a driver's license, this is how you get an ID so you can even apply for a job, since a lot of people we really take for granted don't know where their birth certificates are, or don't have like parents who can help them get to these jobs. We also provide like really, really thorough cognitive behavioral therapy and all kinds of social services. So for a lot of our clients, they spoke to me on the phone and they said, Cases was the first time where somebody listened to my trauma and help me get over it, instead of, keeping it in and helping and it manifesting in some sort of other way. And a lot of our clients also never really had a consistent stream of income. And when we helped them establish a job that they had for, 3 months, 6 months, a year, I've heard the phrase that a lot of crimes are rooted in poverty, but I never really understood it until I saw the effects of how much people change when we help them secure long-term employment, and how much their lives changed in all of these, from basically just having security.
I can hop in next. I think for me, something about Osborne and very similar to Cases is that there is a really, really strong goal to both humanize the individuals you're working with, but also look at ways in which alternative remedies to incarceration might be used to support them and their families, etc. And so I spent a lot of time on the phone with clients just trying to get a sense of their background and what they wanted. And I think the lesson that I took from that is it's really, really vital when you're working within the criminal legal system or any system that works with indigent populations, so those who are dealing with poverty, mental health concerns, etc., to allow them the space to speak, and to allow them the platform to share their own experience and their own wants. So often the criminal justice system kind of assumes what is best for individuals, or decides for those individuals what is going to be the best way to mitigate harm within their respective kind of lives and the communities that they inhabit. And something that my internship at Osborne really showed me was that it's really fundamental to allow individuals the platform and to know that you are there as an advocate and as a support system. Because as soon as you make it clear that you are there to advocate on their behalf and you're somebody looking out for their interests, they're very willing to share, to mention what they think is best for themselves. And the thing is, 99% of the time, they're going to know better than anybody else. And so that was a lesson that I thought was really poignant and powerful through my experience. But I would also say, to Natalia's point as well, whenever I speak to future employers or graduate schools about work I've done, this experience always comes up, because this central tenet of humanization and recognition of individuals beyond criminal sentences or the worst thing they've ever done or whatever that might mean is so fundamental to this work. And Osborne, and especially court advocacy services, were really aware of that, and really aware of the fact that the court system was just one facet of the justice system, and there was a lot more information that needed to be excavated and shared in order to properly advocate. And I think that's just a really strong lesson to take anywhere, is that everybody kind of has this background, this story, and only they can authentically share that, and providing the means to do that is really vital.
I could hop in if nobody else is planning to go next. But I think that for me, I spent the spring before I interned at Vera working at an organization called the Fortune Society, which is really similar to Osborne and to Cases and a lot of these other places that my fellow interns have mentioned, which is a lot more focused on direct services provision. And I think that my main takeaway from Vera was that there's sort of two different ways you can approach this work. There are all these organizations that are involved in the really critical work of direct services provision. And Vera sort of finds itself at this other end that's providing policy assistance to those organizations. So Vera is primarily, at least my team specifically, was providing technical assistance, which is when you're helping nonprofits and community organizations access federal funding through these grants, and you're providing research to help those organizations. And so a lot of my responsibilities were different from what it looked like being on the ground, when, like, because I really was doing similar things when I worked at the Fortune Society, talking to clients who were incarcerated. And this is definitely a little bit more removed from that. Like, a lot of the people that Vera hires are formerly incarcerated. They make a real effort to make sure they're including formerly incarcerated voices in the work that they do and putting formerly incarcerated people in critical positions within their leadership. But I definitely say that I spent a lot more time working with other people who look a lot like people at Barnard and Columbia, who are college educated researchers who are really focused on using all of the knowledge they can and all of the research and evidence they can find to fight both the harms of the mass incarceration system and to fight the system itself. So Vera's, the people that work there or a majority of them consider themselves abolitionists. And so we're all sort of, I really enjoyed working with people who were like-minded and getting a chance to experience the other side of this system, where you get to sort of put your educational experiences and your research experiences and all your previous work experience working within this system to sort of attack it from the outside and really get into the policy and the ways that the government itself is already sort of fighting it. And because I had an experience in education before, this team was really helpful for me to understand the value of post-secondary education and the way that all of these different programs around the country are implementing post-secondary education programs in prison. So I was on a lot of Zoom calls with different partners around the country who provide the services themselves. They are the ones that run the schools in prisons, but I wasn't necessarily talking to the students in those schools. So I definitely say that there is a little bit, there's like an extra layer there where you're sort of working with the people providing services. But I really liked technical assistance, and I'd never been able to experience that before. I really didn't even know that this was a whole sector of people who are also providing critical service to the people incarcerated in the criminal justice system. So that was a big thing I learned, and it definitely helped me sort of see myself moving forward in the work within mass incarceration.
Yeah, I can go next. I'll keep mine pretty short. I think the main thing I learned was just like how many situational factors can affect one's incarceration experience, and just in general their experience in the legal system, especially from like their perspective of the fathers. I guess like one thing particularly with the UPNICS program is just realizing how reverse discrimination works in the court, just because like a lot of these fathers were like arguing with we're co-parenting over a child, and there's like an inherent bias in the court that like mothers take better care of the children. And like speaking with the fathers, I was able to like understand their frustrations and like how in many ways the court system themselves are like flawed. So yeah, that's the main takeaway for me.
Yeah, okay, so I guess I'm last. Okay, so I think I had like a kind of reverse experience than Lily, where before I was a Guggenheim intern, I worked at the ACLU of New York, where we did a lot of research in like alternatives to restorative justice and alternatives to the criminal justice system. And I felt like I knew a lot about the criminal justice system. I read a lot and I did a lot of research, and I helped out with policy. And then shifting from that to like getting to like being on this, going to an internship where I talked to the people that, you know, like that we're here to advocate for, was such an eye-opening experience for me. So I feel like when we have done like practices of like restorative justice circles and a lot of, you know, like hands-on practices with a lot of formerly incarcerated people, and when I like hear their stories, it's it kind of changes your worldview of cycles of violence and just like pain. And when you see like so many the recent like instances of violence, it really changes your worldview of like responsibility and free will, and just how so many failures of people are like failures of a system. And I think that like that change and that insight that I've gained is one of the most valuable things that I've taken away from my time there. And yeah, I think whenever you go into a place, especially a place where, you know, you haven't had like the same experiences as the people you're working with, I think you should go in with a blank slate and go in there and like be willing to learn and be willing to listen.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing those. It was really, really powerful to hear how these summer experiences, and you hear 8 to 10 weeks, and like, it doesn't seem like a lot, but you all seem like you got quite a bit out of it, that goes even beyond what I mentioned as program benefits. So thank you all for sharing that. And so one last bit before we go into next steps, and then hopefully y'all can stick around for Q&A. But what advice do you have for people on this call or people who are going to watch this recording who are potentially interested in applying? Any words of wisdom or advice for folks who are in the shoes you were in at this point last year? Anyone can start.
I can start. I think more than anything, as you're applying and engaging in this process, just remember, as with any internship, but especially with the Guggenheim internships, to represent yourself as honestly as possible in the application. These are positions that are really looking at client-centered work. They're also looking at a way to integrate you into systems of reform and harm reduction and community building, etc. And so they rely on not only your professional and educational experience, but who you are and character, as cliche as that may sound. And as a result, you want to make sure that from the moment that you start the application process, you are representing yourself as such. When I spoke to the individuals at Osborne, they were immediately interested in who I was, what had motivated me to apply for this, what kind of work I had done, even in addition to, say, the classes I had taken at Columbia or Barnard. And so I would say, just remember that you obviously care about this subject. It's why you're interested in this program, and to just represent that as best as possible. And the other piece of advice I would say is, as you're thinking about the two programs that you might be interested in applying to through the Guggenheim internships, I would definitely recommend thinking about the type of work that each group is doing. It's similar, but it is nuanced across the board, and really make sure that you're placing yourself somewhere where you really feel you could make a difference and where you'd really feel engaged. Don't just pick two on a whim. Definitely research each of the organizations and look at those that best fit you and your experience, because that certainly made a difference for me, and that I was really selecting programs that were a little bit different than things I had done before, but also where I knew that I could make a difference given my experience. And I think that's so fundamental as well in the process.
I can go next. I would say, to my biggest piece of advice, I also completely agree with everything Adam said. I would say to really make sure you tailor your cover letter to the two organizations that you're applying to. And it might seem like if you're applying to two similar ones, that you can kind of keep them, the same, since a lot of them do similar work, but really try to differentiate them as much as possible. Do research on their website, see what they do, all those kinds of things. And personally, I had a really specific reason why I wanted to work at cases. So I had worked for the federal public defenders the summer before, and they're public defenders for federal court who basically, although they're public defenders, they basically follow the status quo and don't do anything to try to change the system or do anything that's sort of what I view as progressive. So I had a really specific reason for wanting to work at cases and seeing like a progressive policy being applied to the public defense work. And that's how I personally tailored my application to cases and why I wanted to work there. And if you don't have any type of relevant experience, because I know you absolutely don't have to, so don't feel bad if you don't, because this internship is open to freshmen, and I'm sure even if you are a freshman, that you still have a lot of different applicable experience from high school. But I would say if you don't have specific experience that you can like leverage or use to say why you want to work at this organization, then focus either like on the skills that you have or the potential of what you want to do there, and really try to make it as personal as you can.
Yeah, I can add on to that because when I applied to the Guggenheim internships, I didn't really have a lot of background in like criminal justice or law. So I really focused on like how I was really passionate about criminal justice and like I was wanting to learn more about it. I would also echo what the previous people have said about like understanding what each program does and how they're different, and like because in the interview they will ask you like why you applied to this specific program instead of like other programs, so it's really important to understand like what differentiates each of them and like why you have a particular interest in the one that you're applying for. Yeah, to like research the website, to like look for the buzzwords and like incorporate those into your cover letter and your application. I think that that's really important too. But yeah, those are my main tips.
Yeah, I can jump in. I also think that, I mean, for me, the best resource I had was Beyond Barnard in the application process. Not to sound like the plug for Beyond Barnard, but I definitely was able to talk to people there and sort of tell them about the experience I already had and ask them which one they thought would be right for me. You know, like I think definitely remembering that they're there to help you in this process as they're the ones who are running it is really helpful. And I think that it's like sort of highlighting what Natalia said, if you don't have relevant experience, it's okay. And like, we're all still people who care about this issue for a reason. So making sure that you're sort of highlighting your journey in your cover letter and or personal statement or whichever they're calling it, like make sure you're just telling them who you are and how you got to the point where you think you're perfect for them right now. The person who interviewed me for the program, I think asked me like, why me, why Vera, and why now? And so I think that thinking about those three things as you write your cover letter is really helpful, and making sure that, I know if you get past the initial selection process, I think that definitely planning your interview questions and like practicing your responses, making sure they line up with how you set yourself up in the cover letter. That's all things that are really important. I mean, I'm sure if you've applied for things before, you know all of this, but I think that definitely highlighting your personal relationship to the work and really sort of, it can be a really self-reflective process, like getting to the root of why you want to be here and sort of telling them why you really care. And I think that those things are all really important because this is emotional work. And we're all here because we care.
Yeah, when I talk to a lot of my friends are going into finance and consulting, and they say like one of the hardest questions for them is like why a certain place over another place, or like why this position. And I'm like, really? Because I feel like that is like one of like the easiest questions if you like tailor it right, because everyone I know who works here who works in this type of work, they do it because they're passionate, because they have some type of, they're drawn to it in some way. And I think that that these places, they seek genuine, passionate people. And like all my fellow interns said, like that is something that they value and they cherish. And if you show them that you're committed, and you know, whether you have past experience or not, if you show them that you're genuinely committed to the work that they're doing, they will see that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all. Those are great tips for potential applicants. And just jumping off of Lily's plug, your check's in the mail. So Beyond Barnard can help if you are a Barnard student. If you're Columbia College or School of Engineering or General Studies, you can go to Center for Career Education, and they can help you with resumes, cover letters, interview prep, all of the things that you'll need to successfully get through this. And I can actually reach out to them and give them a heads up that this is happening and to expect maybe some folks. So thank you for everyone for sharing all of your insights from your experience as a Guggenheim intern. Stick around for Q&A, which is going to come up in just a moment, but just wrap up with some next steps. So fill out the interest form. So this fancy QR code. It'll also be, the link will be emailed to you in case you don't want to, pop up on the screen right now. So fill out the interest form. Let us know that you want more information as it comes up. We'll send out reminders for when the application opens, what some of the if there's a heads up or any sorts of changes to the process outlined here. We'll definitely share that as well. Finish the semester strong. It's finals, everyone's stressed. And so then after you're finished, please take a break. The application isn't opening until January for a reason. And that reason is for you to just kind of decompress for a little, take stock of like, if this is something that you want to do, you can start to think about what your personal statement or what your resume could look like, who your recommenders could be, but really unplug, go touch some grass, go, breathe some air, and then just check your email at some point in January or something. Just kind of see if there are emails from us, because they will be at the very least a reminder. And then at some point early next week, this presentation will also be in your email. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all, the lovely panelists. If any questions, if you want to unmute yourself, I've got the chat open. If you want to put your questions in there, you can either send them to me directly or just broadcast them to everyone. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and good luck with the end of your semester, but not going to wrap up just yet if anyone has questions. And thank you, panelists. I see that you've put your contact information in the chat. I love it. And I can, if you're watching this later, can share that with you as well. Question. Okay, so how common is it for international students to apply? Does the internship sponsor OPT? With that, I would say speak to the international office to make sure that you are able to use OPT for this. International students can apply. There aren't any of those restrictions, but there may be with individual employers. And so that information can be in the application for you if you're interested. Definitely can look into that and give you that info if necessary. Can I put the interest form in the chat? I can email you the interest form. It will be in an email with this presentation and with the recording and the slides. So you will not miss the interest form for sure. I just don't have the link on me right now. Sorry, Crystal, but we'll get it, I swear.
I have a question for Lily. You mentioned that you applied your research experience in this Guggenheim job. And I wondered if you could elaborate on what research skills that you applied for this and how they developed throughout this experience.
Ooh, all right. Let me think about it. So prior to in the spring that I also worked at the Fortune Society, I was a research assistant for a professor at Barnard. And the roles of my research were primarily, beyond proofreading and editing documents for submission to journals, I additionally performed a lot of literature review and sourcing for that kind of thing. And so at Vera, I definitely was able to use that and develop my skills because like there would be instances in the meetings that I mentioned with partners, like with nonprofits or with other people implementing their education programs. There would be instances where they would be facing problems and they would have to be answering questions about legislation that maybe they weren't able to figure out on their own. Like one specific example is one of the partners is actually the Cherokee Nation. And so they face a lot of issues with being able to apply certain assessments for formerly incarcerated people to Indigenous people and people that are tribal members because they're made for white men. And so a lot of the same categories that they apply to white men don't apply because they sort of have different cultural practices and there's different reasons they're incarcerated in some instances. And so I was able to, like, because I was on that call, I sort of heard about that and wondered if there would be more, if there were other tribal nations who were sort of building their own assessments. And I was able to use the research skills I had gained being a research assistant to sort of put together a comprehensive report of all of the other instances of people building their own programs like that. So that's sort of one example, but I definitely think that being able to put together a comprehensive literature review helped me in supporting my supervisor in her technical assistance. And I'm also happy to talk about it more. That's like the first thing that comes to the top of my head, but I'm happy to talk about it more. And I can think more about how I applied those skills. But I think, yeah, that's my answer for now.
Thanks, Lily. Any other questions? I know we're getting up to the 2 o'clock time and a couple minutes left, but anyone want to come off mute or feel free to email any questions you may have for me. And if I can't answer them, I can crowdsource for sure. Another minute, I'm going to go on mute because there's a fight going on outside of my office. in the street, not like in the actual hallway.
I have another question, this time for Adam. So you mentioned in speaking about your experience that you had a role where you drafted policy. In what way did you assist with drafting policy, and what did that entail?
Sure. So basically, the way Osborne works is that in order to provide individuals the means to potentially receive alternative remedies to incarceration, you have to advocate on their behalf, both via interviews, but also you have to create a report and a policy recommendation. And so what it often meant is that for my first several weeks of my internship, I would sit in on calls with the older colleagues that I was working with to see the types of questions they asked, and then they would kind of sit on a Zoom call with me as they drafted whatever their recommendation was. And I would kind of get a feel for what that would look like. And then over the course of, the internship, after the first several weeks, I began to do that on my own. It would then kind of go through my supervisors before it was published. But policy in and of itself, at least as it related to Osborne, was more so policy recommendations that could range from anything from, we believe that this individual should receive, treatment for substance use, as well as a more permanent address because they've been dealing with homelessness, all the way down to something more involved, which could be, we are going to take this individual into our services at Osborne. This is what we're looking at. Here's the timeline we think that should look like, and here's what we believe will come out of that. It really was a case-by-case basis, but it comes down to really based on the interviews that you have with clients and familiarizing yourself with sort of the types of programs that Osborne was offering. And so I spent 2 to 3 weeks at the start of my internship really just like getting a lay of the land and trying to see any different avenue of policy and recommendation that could be implemented or recommended to judges, to lawyers, etc. Before I even started implementing that. But that was sort of what it was. It was less like a broad policy recommendation in the sense of like a legislative internship, and more of a specific policy for a client by client basis. So I wouldn't say any of my letters were really exactly the same. They were all based on the interviews and conversations I had had, and kind of a myriad number of recommendations could be proposed during that process. Hopefully that helps.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I'm gonna end this here, but just a big thank you again to all the panelists, everyone who stopped in. Hopefully, you'll all apply and it'll be amazing, and we'll be in touch. So thanks again, and have a great rest of the semester and a really great break. You've all earned that.